They say schools are supposed to feel safe. Rows of little desks, colorful posters, and the echo of laughter in the halls. But Eldridge Elementary hadn't heard laughter in over 40 years. The building stood like a scar on the edge of town, boarded up, overgrown, and slumped like it was tired of keeping secrets. Most folks in Morgan Hollow avoided it. Even kids didn't dare throw rocks at the windows or dare each other to peek inside. It wasn't just haunted, it was wrong. No one knew that better than Marcus Wynn. He was the son of the last teacher who ever worked at Eldridge. Marcus came back to the Hollow after his mother passed. She never talked much about the school, just that she had nightmares that started the day they locked the doors. "It's not the kids that scare me," she'd whisper in her sleep, tossing under the sheets. "It's what keeps them." She died with her fists clenched, like she was holding something back even in death. After the funeral, Marcus was sorting through her things when he found the keys. Not just any keys. These were old brass ones, heavy, labeled with fading tags: main hall, boiler room, south wing, and one, dangling at the end, had no label at all. It was darker than the rest, like it had been dipped in shadow. There was also a note, scribbled in trembling handwriting. "If you hear them, don't answer. If you see them, don't speak. And whatever you do, don't open the music room." Marcus wasn't superstitious. He'd grown up in Chicago, dealt with real problems. Ghost stories were just small town folklore. Still, something about the key ring felt like it burned cold in his hand. But he pocketed it anyway. 2 nights later, he walked to the school. The gate was rusted shut, but one kick and it gave way. Weeds curled around the stone steps. The front doors, once painted sky blue, were now cracked and colorless. Marcus slipped the main hall key into the lock, and the door opened with a sound like a sigh, or maybe a groan. Inside, dust blanketed everything. Rows of lockers lined the walls, their metal flaking off like diseased skin. A child's backpack, sun, faded and mold, stained, leaned against the base of one. The air had that damp, sour smell, like wet paper and something faintly metallic. Then he heard it. A soft tapping, rhythmic, like chalk against a blackboard. He froze. There was no wind, no trees near enough to brush the building. He stepped forward, slowly. The floor creaked beneath him, but the tapping didn't stop. It was coming from down the hall. His mother's voice rang in his head. "Don't answer. Don't speak." He gritted his teeth and kept going. The hallway stretched far longer than it should have. That was the first thing he noticed. He walked for what felt like 5 minutes, but every door was still labeled Grade 2, Miss Owens, like he hadn't moved at all. Then the light flickered. He looked up. The fluorescent bulbs above were still glowing, faintly. They shouldn't have been. The school had no electricity, not since 1984. The town made sure of it after what? No one ever said exactly. Just that a fire had broken out, but there were no scorch marks. No bodies, just silence. The tapping stopped. Marcus turned. Behind him, about 20 feet away, stood a child, pale skin, blue uniform, hair tied in pigtails with red ribbons that looked far too fresh. She didn't move. Marcus blinked. She was closer. He blinked again. Now she was standing right behind him. He spun, heart thudding, but no one was there. Suddenly, the school bell rang, long, slow, and cracked with age, but clear. Then, all the doors along the hall slowly creaked open, one by one. Class was back in session. Marcus stumbled back, hands out as if to hold off the doors, slowly swinging open all around him. They didn't slam, didn't move fast, just smooth, steady. Like someone invisible was walking into each classroom. He turned in a slow circle, his breath hitching as he realized every door now stood wide. Not one was empty. Children, dozens of them, sitting at their desks like time had stopped the moment the school shut down. Every single one turned their head toward Marcus in perfect, unnatural unison. Blank eyes, pale skin, smiles that were just a bit too wide. He backed up, his feet sliding on the dusty linoleum floor, and bumped into something soft behind him, a hand, small, cold. He whipped around and saw a boy in a striped sweater, no more than 7, but something in the kid's eyes looked older. Wiser. Wrong. "You're not supposed to be here," the boy said, voice too flat for a child. Marcus tried to speak, but his throat was locked tight. The boy reached out and tugged the keyring from Marcus's pocket with an effortless move, fingers passing through fabric like fog. Then he held up the darkest key, the unlabeled one, the one that made Marcus's spine twitch. "You brought this back," the boy whispered. "Now we can finish." Before Marcus could react, the kid vanished, just blinked out of existence. The key dropped, clattering to the floor with a metallic ring that echoed much too long. Then, the lights above him popped, one by one, fizzling out in a line down the hall. Darkness chased him like a wave. He turned and ran, heart pounding, lungs burning. He had no idea which direction he was headed now, just that he needed out. But the school had changed. The entrance was gone. In its place stood another hallway, narrower, older looking. The paint peeled like skin off bone, and the smell grew worsey sour milk, mildew, and something else, something coppery. Marcus tripped, landing hard on the floor, the breath knocked out of him. He looked up and saw a door at the very end of the corridor. A black door. The music room. His mother's note pulsed in his memory like a heartbeat. "Don't open the music room." And yet, he was crawling toward it. Not by choice. It felt like something was pulling him. Not his body, his mind, his will. Like the moment that unlabeled key hit the ground, something inside this building had woken up, and it wanted him. Behind him, soft whispers began, dozens of tiny voices, giggling, humming, whispering. He didn't dare turn around. He just crawled, his palms sliding over cold floor tiles, slick with dampness. When he reached the door, the whispers stopped. Everything stopped. The hallway went dead silent. Even the buzzing in his ears disappeared. He reached for the knob, even as his whole body screamed not to. It was smooth and cold, and the moment his fingers touched it, he was back on his feet, standing upright, inside the music room. Only, it didn't look like a room anymore. It looked like a stage. A theater swallowed in darkness, with a lone spotlight shining on a piano at the center. A black grand piano, gleaming like fresh tar. Marcus turned to leave, but the door behind him was gone. He stepped forward, his shoes making no sound. As he neared the piano, a girl stepped out from the shadows. Not the one from before. This one looked almost normal. Almost long brown hair, blue dress. Barefoot, she looked up at him and smiled. Her mouth didn't move when she spoke. "We've been waiting for you, Mr. Wynn." He opened his mouth to respond, but all that came out was a note, a clear, musical note, like a piano key. He clutched his throat, panic rising. "You brought the key," she continued. "Now you get to play." Suddenly, the piano's lid slammed open on its own, and the strings inside began to twitch. Move tighten. They weren't strings, they were hair. Human hair, and from the depths of the piano, dozens of fingers began to rise, not playing, reaching. Marcus froze as the fingers kept rising, thin, pale, twitching like spider legs. Each one coiled around the rim of the piano, like it was clawing its way up from something deeper. Something not meant to be seen. His body screamed at him to move, but his feet wouldn't obey. It was like the room held him in place, bound not by ropes, but by memory, fear, and something far older than either. The girl in the blue dress took a step closer. Her face remained eerily calm, but her eyes flickered like candlelight caught in a draft. "We were locked in here," she said softly, almost sweetly. "Left to rot when the grown-ups ran. But now you're here, and the music must finish." From behind the piano, a figure began to rise. Marcus took a step back. It was tall, too tall, its form hunched to fit beneath the spotlight. wrapped in what looked like a conductor's robe, but darker than pitch, darker than anything natural. The figure's face was covered in a cracked porcelain mask with a painted grin. Not a happy grin. A twisted, warped one, the kind drawn by someone who'd forgotten what real joy ever looked like. The girl turned to it and curtsied. "Mr. Holloway, our guest has arrived." The conductor nodded once, slowly, and raised his baton. The fingers inside the piano began to twitch rhythmically, like they were rehearsing, like they had done this before. Many, many times. Marcus couldn't move. He couldn't even scream. Mr. Holloway's mask turned toward him, and Marcus heard music. Not with his ears, but inside his head. Dissonant chords, backwards nursery rhymes, and the sound of crying layered under every note. He tried to shut it out, but the sound wormed deeper, clawing at his memories. He saw flashes of children, sitting at their desks, eyes bleeding. A janitor running from a classroom, his skin bubbling like boiling wax. A girl jumping from the third floor, only to float in place for a second, and then vanish mid-air. The music built louder and louder in his skull. Then suddenly, it stopped. The fingers inside the piano curled inward and retreated. Mr. Holloway dropped his baton. The lights cut out. Darkness again. Marcus gasped, falling to his knees. But the silence didn't last long. From all directions, voices began whispering again. Children's voices. Dozens, hundreds maybe. "Play with us," they giggled. "It's your turn now. Tag, you're it. Don't run, Mr. Wynn. Running makes it worse." A soft light flared ahead of him. The piano had vanished, and in its place was a long hallway, different from the one before, warped. The floor was carpeted in what looked like old, rotted school uniforms. Lockers lined the walls, but every door was open, and inside each one teeth, human teeth, filed, broken, or still bloody at the root. Marcus stumbled forward, not looking too closely, just needing to move. He passed a locker that suddenly slammed shut beside him. Then another. Slum. Each one shut just as he walked past. Like the school was watching. Like it was deciding something. When he reached the end of the hallway, there was a door, painted white, cracked with age. Written across it in marker were the words, "Dtinundontirules-sumonind." Marcus reached out. He didn't want to open it. But something behind him was coming now. Heavy footsteps, wet breathing. The whispers had stopped. Whatever was back there wasn't a child. It wasn't a memory. It was real. Marcus threw open the detention door and stepped through. But he wasn't in a room. He was outside. On the school playground. Only, it wasn't how it looked now. It was how it used to be. New paint. Swings gently swaying. Bright, clear sky. Children played, ran, laughed. All wearing the same uniforms as before. All smiling. He stood there, blinking in disbelief. Then one of them pointed at him. "There he is." A girl yelled. "That's the one who brought the key." They all turned toward him, their cheerful expressions hardening. The wind picked up. The sun flickered. And in that one instant, all the children vanished again. Only now, the playground wasn't empty. There was one swing moving on its own, and sitting on it was a small boy, eyes dark and bottomless, holding something in his lap. The unlabeled key. Marcus stepped forward cautiously, eyes locked on the boy swaying on the swing. The wind had stopped, but the swing still moved, back and forth. Back and forth, like the air itself hadn't realized time was standing still again. The boy didn't look up. His hands gripped the dark key in his lap tightly, and his legs dangled just high enough that they didn't touch the ground. He was humming a tune, soft, slow, and broken, like a lullaby that had been forgotten halfway through. Marcus swallowed. "Who are you?" The boy didn't answer at first, just kept humming. Then, still staring at the ground, he said, "I used to be like them. I was just a student. Came here every day, recess, spelling tests, lined up in the cafeteria. But I saw what the teachers did. I saw what they buried. Marcus's throat tightened. What did they bury? The boy stopped swinging. He finally looked up. His face was pale, lips almost purple, but it was his eyes that chilled Marcus the most. They were hollow. Not in a poetic way, literally hollow. Black. Empty sockets where eyes should have been, but somehow still looking right at him. They buried the deal. Marcus took a step back. What deal? The boy stood from the swing. As his feet touched the ground, it let out a groan, like something ancient was shifting under the earth. There was something in this school, something older than the walls. It wanted energy. Souls, and the adults, our teachers, the principal, they gave it what it wanted. Marcus shook his head. That's not possible.
They sacrificed us?
The boy snapped, his voice suddenly booming across the empty playground. The air itself seemed to vibrate with his anger. One at a time. Every month. Disappearances blamed on accidents, or family moves, or police reports that went nowhere. He stepped closer, holding the dark key out. But they didn't finish the ritual. One kid fought back, locked the room, sealed the last piece. That's why it all froze. That's why the school shut down. But you, Marcus could barely breathe now. You brought the last key. You unlocked it again. And now it's hungry. The swing behind the boy suddenly twisted and snapped upward, hanging still in mid-air, like someone unseen had grabbed it. All around them, the playground equipment started contorting. The slide bent into impossible angles. The monkey bars began spinning slowly. The merry-go-round shrieked like metal against bone, and from the sky above, the light began to dim, not like sunset, but like someone pulling a curtain over the world. The boy looked up. It's waking up. Marcus backed away. I didn't mean to. You were chosen, the boy said, his voice soft again. Because of your mother. She was the last adult who refused. She tried to stop it, hid the key, left the town. But her bloodline was always part of it. So now it falls on you. Marcus stumbled, almost fell. I'm not part of anything. I just wanted to understand, to know what happened to her. And now you will, the boy whispered. The ground beneath Marcus gave way. Suddenly, he was falling, sinking into darkness, into cold, damp soil that wasn't really soil. It was the carpet from the classrooms, the floor tiles from the hall, desks, chalk, screams frozen in time. He fell through it all, until he hit something soft. He sat up, coughing. He was back inside the school. In the boiler room, rust dripped from the pipes. The air was thick and foul. In the corner, an old furnace groaned to life. Its doors creaked open, and inside flames burned blue, cold, unnatural blue. On the walls, names were written in chalk. Children's names. Some were half erased. Some were smudged, like someone had been clawing to get their name off the list. At the very bottom, fresh and clear, was a new name, Marcus Wynn. Then came a voice. Not a child's. Not even human. It rumbled from the furnace like a beast made of smoke and bone. Welcome back, Wynn. The school remembers its debt. Marcus screamed as the furnace flared brighter, and shadows with arms began crawling down the walls toward him. The shadows slithered like liquid nightmares, stretching long fingers across the boiler room walls. The furnace groaned louder, exhaling smoke thick as ink. Marcus scrambled backward, but the floor shifted beneath him, slick with something wet, something that smelled like rust and old blood. He clawed at the walls, gasping.
Stop! I didn't agree to this.
A voice hissed back, not from the furnace this time, but from behind him. You were born into it. He turned sharply, and there she was again. The girl in the blue dress, no longer calm. Her eyes glowed now, a sickly white. Her mouth twitched like it had been sewn shut, and only recently torn open. She floated a few inches above the floor. You think you're here by mistake, she snarled. We've been waiting for you since the day you took your first breath. We remember every moment your mother fought to keep us buried. I didn't know. Marcus cried. She never told me. She was weak, the girl hissed. She broke the chain but never destroyed it. That made you the chain's final link. The furnace doors burst wide open and something began crawling out, slow and deliberate. Not fully visible, just a shape, pitch black, limbs too long, bones creaking like ancient doors. A head crowned with twisted iron. And in its chest, dozens of small, screaming mouths opened and shut in silent agony. The heat didn't burn, it froze. Marcus felt it in his teeth, in his spine. You can still finish it, the girl said. Take the last step. Offer yourself willingly. End the hunger. He shook his head violently. I won't. Then we take, she said. We always do. Suddenly the boiler room cracked like glass. Every inch of wall and pipe and ceiling shattered, revealing the truth beneath. The school was never real. What surrounded Marcus now was a space that defied logic, an endless black void held together by shifting fragments of classrooms, stairwells, and playgrounds, all suspended like broken toys in a box too large to fathom. Children's laughter echoed in the darkness, but it was warped now, like a tape melting in heat. Happy sounds twisted into screams, and in the center, hovering in the air, was the conductor, Mr. Holloway, arms raised again, baton glowing with faint red light. He pointed the baton at Marcus. You will play. Invisible hands grabbed Marcus, lifting him up, dragging him toward a floating desk, the same one from second grade. His mother's handwriting still on the chalkboard behind it. He was strapped in before he could resist, arms pinned to the surface, face pressed forward as the dark key hovered in the air above him. The conductor lowered the baton, and the key slowly descended, aimed at Marcus's chest like a blade. No, Marcus screamed. Suddenly, something shattered through the air. A voice, not from the darkness, his mother's voice. Firm, clear, fierce. You don't get him. Not my son. A blinding light cut through the void, gold and warm, like dawn cracking through a nightmare. The girl in the blue dress screamed, face blistering under the glow. The conductor stumbled backward, his mask cracking down the middle. Marcus blinked and saw her, his mother. Not as she'd looked in her final years, but young, standing in the middle of the void, holding a lantern carved with strange symbols. Her eyes locked with Marcus's. Run, she said. I broke the first seal. You break the last. Get to the music room. Finish what I couldn't. The light expanded, and for one brief second, Marcus was free. The straps vanished, the air around him loosened, and the hands holding him lost their grip. He hit the ground hard, scrambled to his feet, and ran. Through floating doorways, collapsing corridors, spiraling stairwells that formed and vanished beneath his steps. He didn't look back. Somewhere ahead, glowing faintly like a heartbeat, was the music room door. Only now it was different. It was clean, real. The only thing that looked untouched by this hell. Marcus ran toward it as the shadows chased him. The children screamed, and Mr. Holloway's voice shrieked from above. Whoa, you can't escape your name. But Marcus wasn't trying to escape. He was going to end it. Marcus reached the music room door, just as the last of the hallway behind him collapsed into screaming void. He threw it open and slammed it shut behind him, bracing his body against it even though he knew, deep down, no lock or handle could hold back what chased him. But nothing banged. Nothing pounded. Silence, the kind that weighed on the lungs. The room was bright, unnaturally so, lit by no clear source, but glowing with soft white light that felt out of place after so much darkness. The floor was polished wood again. The air was warm. For a second, it looked like a regular classroom, with rows of music stands and chairs. But then Marcus saw the piano again. At the center, perfect, pristine, and on the bench was her. His mother, or at least, what was left of her. She looked younger again. Not alive, but not quite dead either. She sat with her back straight, fingers poised above the keys, eyes closed like she was listening to something he couldn't hear. "Mom," Marcus whispered. Her eyes opened slowly. "You made it." Marcus stepped closer. "What is this? What are you?" She smiled weakly. "I'm what's left of me. The part that never stopped fighting. I've been here since I locked the door. Since I broke the first piece of the chain. You died. My body did." She looked at him now, fully. "But I couldn't leave. Not until someone finished it. And you brought the key. You woke it. Now you have to end it." Marcus dropped to his knees. "I don't know how." She turned back to the piano. "Play." He stared at it like it was a monster, not an instrument. "I don't remember how." "You don't need to. Just feel it. This place listens to emotion, not music. That's why it trapped children. That's why it fed on fear. But if you play something it doesn't understand, something pure, it will break it." Marcus hesitated, then climbed onto the bench beside her. His fingers hovered over the keys. He pressed one. It echoed, clean and soft. The walls shook. His mother began to hum, a familiar tune, a lullaby he hadn't heard since childhood. He remembered the melody now. Remembered lying in bed, with the covers tucked to his chin, while her voice guided him to sleep, far away from the nightmares. He started to play. The notes were shaky at first, but grew stronger. With each one, the room flickered. The light grew brighter. The walls began to melt, not decay, not rot, but peel away like a dream unraveling. Then, the door behind them burst open. The shadows had found him. Mr. Holloway stepped through first, his porcelain mask shattered, revealing a face of smoke and cinders. Behind him, the children came marching, their eyes gone, their feet dragging, and at the end the boy from the swing, still holding the dark key. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. Marcus played faster, louder. The lullaby was almost finished now. The room was splitting apart, cracks forming in the air itself. His mother placed her hand on top of his. "Final note," she said softly. "Play it from your heart." Marcus closed his eyes and pressed the last key. The room exploded with light. A blinding burst that silenced every scream, shattered every figure, burned through every whisper. It wasn't fire or wind. It was clarity, the raw force of memory and love tearing through the lie of the haunted school. When Marcus opened his eyes, everything was gone. The children, Mr. Holloway, the music room, even the school. He stood in an open field, dew on the grass, sky soft with morning light, and beside him nothing. No piano, no mother, just a warmth in his chest, like she had left something behind. At his feet, half buried in the soil, was the dark key. Now cracked in two. He picked it up. It turned to ash in his hands, then a sound behind him. A distant school bell. But this time it didn't echo. It rang once, and never again. Marcus stood in that field for a long time, listening to nothing but the breeze in the grass. The key was gone. The music was gone. Even the weight that had been crushing his chest for days felt lighter. But not completely gone. Like a bruise where a wound had finally begun to heal. He turned in a slow circle. No trace of the school. Not a brick, not a rusted gate. Only trees in the distance. The early sun brushing the sky with soft golds and sleepy blues. He almost doubted it had all happened, until he felt the scar on his palm. A fresh one, jagged and raw. He didn't remember getting it, but it was there. A mark. Proof. He walked. Didn't know where he was going, didn't care. Eventually, he reached the edge of town. And there it was, Morgan Hollow, just as he'd left it. Quiet, unassuming, still pretending that nothing dark had ever slithered beneath its foundations. The townspeople didn't notice him as he walked by. They never had. He was just Wynn's boy. Now, no one even remembered her name. He passed the diner, the hardware store, the tiny sheriff's office that never opened before noon. Everything the same, but Marcus had changed, and so had the town, slightly, subtly. It was like a smell in the air that had finally lifted, a tension no one had noticed until it was gone. People smiled easier, talked louder. Kids ran through the streets again, like something had been lifted from all of them too, even if they didn't know what. Marcus returned to his mother's house. Unlocked the door with a hand that still trembled a little. It smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. He walked past her photos, her old teaching books stacked on the shelf, her unopened mail. And there, on the kitchen table, was the note she'd left with the keys. He picked it up again. If you hear them, don't answer. If you see them, don't speak. And whatever you do, don't open the music room. He turned the paper over. This time, there was something new on the back. If you do open it, finish the song. His eyes burned, but he didn't cry. Not now. Not anymore. He stayed in the house that night, lying in her old bed, listening to the silence that no longer threatened to break into whispers. When he woke the next morning, something tugged at him, something unfinished. He drove out to the library. It was closed. He waited. When it opened, he asked for the old town records. The woman at the desk looked at him strange, but handed him the dusty boxes with a shrug. No one ever asks for these, she muttered. Be careful, they're falling apart. He sat in the back and read for hours. Names, dates, photos, teachers, students, all from Eldridge Elementary. A pattern started to form. One missing student every year, sometimes two, always between 1969 and 1984. The names blurred together, but his fingers stopped at one photo. A boy on a swing, eyes shadowed, striped sweater. No name listed. He flipped through more, found another. Mr. Holloway, principal. But he hadn't died in the fire like they said. He disappeared, vanished with 32 other children. The story had been buried, sanitized. The town had made a deal of its own, with silence. Better to forget, safer. But something still felt wrong. There was one folder left, taped shut, old and brittle. Marcus opened it gently. Inside was a list. Reclaimed children. Subject to manifestation. It included every name he'd seen on the chalkboard wall. And one more at the bottom. Pending. Marcus Wynn. His heart thudded. Next to it, written in ready, Severed. He leaned back, hand on his chest. The scar on his palm throbbed once, then went still. He had broken the cycle. The chain had ended. And yet, as he closed the folder and returned the boxes, he noticed something just outside the library window. Across the street, a child. Standing very still, wearing a blue dress, barefoot. Her eyes were just shadows. She didn't move, didn't wave, just watched. Marcus stared back for a long time. Then he turned away. He wasn't scared. Not anymore. Some ghosts don't haunt you because they're evil. Some haunt you because they don't know how to stop. Marcus didn't go back to the library again, or the school grounds, or anywhere near that side of Morgan Hollow. But not because he was afraid. He wasn't. He just understood now. Some things weren't meant to be revisited. Not because they'd hurt him again, but because they were done. Like a wound that scabbed over, ugly but healing. It wasn't meant to be picked open. The town had scars too. So did he. He stayed in the house for a few more days, sorting through the last of his mother's things. Her closet, full of old perfume bottles and shoes she never threw out. Her journals. Letters she never mailed. He found one addressed to him, never sealed. It was written in ink faded with time, but her handwriting was steady. Marcus, if you're reading this, then I couldn't stop it in time. I tried to hide you from it all, but I knew eventually it would reach for you. This thing isn't just a ghost. It's hunger wrapped in memory. A thing that needs to be remembered to survive. The school was its nest. You were always stronger than me. If you made it this far, then you've done what I couldn't. But remember, just because you closed a door doesn't mean it won't knock again. Keep it locked. Love. Mom. Marcus folded the letter and tucked it into his jacket pocket. He didn't cry. He couldn't. There was something hollow in him now, Something quiet, but not broken. More like, still. He left Morgan Hollow 2 weeks later. Didn't say goodbye. He didn't think anyone would remember him anyway. That was how this town survived. Selective memory. They'd forgotten the children, forgotten the teachers, even forgotten the fire and how no bodies were ever found. They'd forget him too. That was fine. He moved north, found a town with no name on the highway signs, and no churches or schools too old to feel clean. Rented a small apartment above a bakery. The woman who ran it reminded him of someone. He didn't know who. Maybe that was part of healing. Letting pieces of the past become something soft. He worked odd jobs. Read at night. Stopped checking the news. Stopped talking about Morgan Hollow, about the school, about the ghost of the girl in the blue dress. She didn't appear again. Not really. But sometimes, in the corner of his eye, he'd see a shadow standing perfectly still, never moving, never following, just watching. One night, about a year later, he walked past a music shop. Inside, a young girl sat at a piano, her teacher gently correcting her hand position. She struck a wrong note, and they both laughed. Marcus stood there for a long time, listening. It was just a song, no shadows, no voices, no cursed keys or crying walls, just a song. He went home that night and took out a notebook, the one with the letter still folded inside the back. He wrote something for the first time in a year, a lullaby, simple, gentle, no lyrics, just notes. And in the silence of that little room above the bakery, he played it on a small, second-hand keyboard he'd picked up the week before. No lights flickered, no doors slammed, no voices whispered, just music. It wasn't perfect, but it was his. And as the final note lingered in the air, Marcus smiled, for real this time. Because he knew that even in places where ghosts linger, not every haunting has to end in horror. Some just need someone to listen, finish the song, and let them go.